All right, guys. I have somebody today for you who is probably one of the smartest minds in restoration, besides just being super cool. I'm a huge, huge fan of her. Michelle Blevins is here. For those of you guys who don't know her already, she is the one and only genius behind C&R Cleaning and Restoration magazine, and she puts out they're actually probably putting out as much good stuff in the industry as you can find really any place. And then on top of that, she spent years working for restoration and remediation. She knows this industry super well and actually has a lot of wealth of experience with contractors in general. But today we brought her on to talk about restoration. So thank you, Michelle, for being here and doing this.
Frankie, thanks for having me here, and thanks for the partnership that you've brought over the last few months, and you've helped me wade through some issues of my own related to content strategy and marketing and all that. So I appreciate your expertise as well.
Yeah, likewise. And it's really cool because you're a genius in your own right. And one of the things I wanted to ask you is probably the best place to start this conversation is, as I was kind of mentioning off air, one of your unique insights is because you meet so many restoration contractors. You see the 30,000-foot view. You see the same problems come up, the same challenges and the same stuff. What are some of the things that in your mind are really like the things like the biggest bleeding neck things that you hear again and again and again from contractors? Like, what are those top maybe two, three kind of things?
So biggest pain points for contractors remain getting paid is huge. Hiring and retaining employees is big. I think the hiring side has maybe gotten a little bit easier. I think the market has gotten a little bit better, but still finding the right people and getting the right people in the right seats is a big problem, as well as retaining your employees. And let's see, getting paid, hiring and retention, and there's another one, but it's escaping me right now. That's
Probably
not
just
great.
getting jobs in the first place, like consistently.
Yes,
That's obviously
of
one I.
course.
So let's talk about firstly the one you hear the most, getting paid. I see this in the form of not just getting paid, but getting paid, the right amount, the amount you're actually, all these tactics insurance companies do will to lower. You really you're a big believer in a couple. I know you use one claim and there's a couple other solutions that you recommend. But I wonder if you could just talk about, like, there are solutions for these things out there, and you don't have to be like this contractor who's starving for a check for 6 months that they're going to try and talk you down from anyway.
I think the first place, okay, there's multiple steps here. One place that restorers need to think about is what their price lists look like. You can customize your price list. You can have price lists based on what is happening in your market. You do not have to go based on what's in Xactimate or Symbility. You don't have to. There's even like Mike Fulton, the past president of Verisk Estimating Solutions, which is Xactware. He will even say, and it says in the contracts with Xactimate and Xactware, their prices are not like the Bible. That's
Yeah.
not the end game. They're meant to be like kind of a guideline for what
Yeah.
pricing looks like. So you can create and customize your price lists. And then it's also switching the terminology from, hey, adjuster, here's my estimate, to here's my invoice for the work that we've done. Quit calling your bill an estimate. If you like, if you've done the work, this is it. This is what you're charging. And if it's fair market value and it's within the policy and all of those things, there's no reason that you shouldn't get paid for the work that you're doing, as long as your pricing is fair and accurate and all of those requirements that would come into that. I think restorers have also just gotten kind of heated when it comes to thinking about working with adjusters at all. So we've kind of lost the art of communication, right? Where contractors will just close themselves off. And kind of going back to what I first said about, like, here's my invoice. Sometimes you need to explain what's on your invoice. This is why it took us more than 3 days to dry. This is why we needed that extra dehue or air mover. This is why we needed to replace this flooring versus drying in place or whatever it may be. And that's where your photo documentation comes in. Make sure that your techs or whoever project managers are making detailed notes in your photo documentation. Don't just like take the photos and assume that people are going to know what's going on in the photo. The more detailed you can be in your notes and your photos, the more evidence that has for you to take to the adjuster and be like, look, this is what happened. Here's the entire story. And the contractors that are doing that get way less pushback than the ones who are just like, here's my bill, just pay up. You have to have the backing for what you've done.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that because I in a former life, I spent a lot of time working with a lot of the top personal injury lawyers, and it's the same kind of challenges, coming at the insurance process from a different way. And regardless of what happened for somebody, you have to like gather evidence to prove your case in that
Mhm.
process. And the more you have evidence to back it up, and that's like they got to keep careful receipts and pictures and notes from doctors and all those kind of things. And I really think, as you mentioned, like thinking about it like that, like almost like a case you're have to bring to court, even though obviously the more prepared you are, like you said, the less you're going to get pushback. I wonder if you could just talk about, because you had mentioned to me two solutions for what to do when like you got this outstanding invoice. I know there were two companies you recommended. One Claim Solution was one, and I forget the other one off the top of my head, but I'd love to hear just some resources for people that they can go grab.
Sure. So one claim solution is on the mitigation side. So if you need help with your MIT invoices, they're one solution. And then surety is on the mortgage check side. So if you have a lender that's like a third party on a check and you're trying to get paid, surety will smooth that out. Look at, I even have look at that. Surety. That's
Love
them.
it.
Not using it at the moment, but I used it earlier. I just didn't get it set up for this one. So surety is the other solution.
Awesome. So I'd love to hear as well, like some of your insights on just the hiring side. Like, what are the companies that are not struggling with this and that they're consistently able to bring in good help and keep them? Like, what are some of the things they're doing different than a lot of the contractors you see who are, starving for good help kind of thing?
One, don't just rely on Indeed ads, please. Two, be recruiting every single day, no matter where you are. If you encounter somebody who's an excellent customer service person in a restaurant or in a store or wherever you may be, you might want to chat that person up, because customer service is kind of at the root of restoration. And any of the skills of restoring a building can be taught, but those soft skills cannot really be taught. Like either people have them or they don't. So if you hire for the soft skills and find people that are going to care for your customers well, you can train for the other stuff. So consider and also don't just look in the industry, please. Did I say that first? Please don't like pigeonhole yourself within the industry. When I was a recruiter in restoration, I found a lot of times that people wanted an estimator, for example, who knew Xactimate, or they wanted a project manager who came, or a BDR who came with a book of business. It doesn't really work that way. Like they can't necessarily automatically bring their book of business with them. That could bring issues with their past company, right? And it takes time to rebuild those relationships once they've moved. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but the same with the estimator. Most of the time we could have hired somebody so much faster who had good tech savvy versus maybe they didn't know Xactimate, but if they had some sort of construction background and were good with technology, they can be trained on Xactimate. It's just a piece of software. So don't pigeonhole yourself into thinking that you need somebody for an estimator role who has Xactimate or as an Xactimate certification or whatever. They also could come with bad habits. CM might just be better off training somebody. But I think the most successful companies are the ones that are willing to that are always paying attention. So there are some companies that even have little business cards that their entire team carries around. So anytime anybody on the team, from technician all the way to the owner, runs into somebody with great customer service who might fit the team well, they give them this business card that says like, hey, you're a customer service rock star. If you're interested in chatting about like a different career, give us a call or whatever. And so that's just like a cool outreach way.
Yeah.
On the retention side, companies that are really thinking about benefits and like work-life balance are the ones that tend to do the best with retaining their employees, thinking a little bit more outside the box beyond just normal 401k health insurance, stuff like that, like starting to think about parental leave and more team building activities and finding things that bring value to your entire team to get involved in beyond
Yeah.
just work.
Yeah. Good old fashioned caring goes a long way in that too, I'd say.
Sure does. Yes, it
Yeah.
does.
Yeah, I love that advice. I experienced the same thing in our world because obviously, as we built our team and stuff like that, trying to find a unicorn who already knows how to run like Google ads for restoration is one thing. But if they have some familiarity with the basic concepts and then you can kind of mold and train them,
Yep.
that's usually a much better path than trying to find that magic unicorn out of the box that already knows how to do everything you want them to do. So
Yep.
I think that's great advice. I want to talk to you lastly because I know we got a little bit of a time limit here, but I want to talk to you about Good old fashioned getting jobs is probably my favorite topic of the bunch, like getting work in the door. Let's talk about firstly, what works and what doesn't. Like, what do you see like across the board, like, things that people are struggling try and do, and things that, successful people in this industry kind of just do time and time again.
So most people at this point want to get into commercial work. So I would say one of the most successful ways that I've been seeing people get into commercial work is by offering ERPs and making those emergency response plans and making those relationships with your local government agencies, your local school district, the big office buildings near you, any other big businesses, factories, whatever that may be, and going in with a service mindset, a customer first mindset, where it's like, you might be setting up this ERP now, and they might not have a loss for a couple of years, but you're going to be top of mind, and you're going to know their layouts, their needs, and that gives you the immediate foot in the door once you've built this ERP out for them, to keep that relationship going, so that you're the first one that they call when there's a loss. And those are some of the bigger losses out there. Same with property managers, right? Like there's a lot of larger entities that you could reach out to offer to create ERPs, and then keep those updated, because oftentimes facility managers don't have the bandwidth to do those or keep those updated, and they don't always know who to call if there is something that happens. So you want your company to be top of mind, and offering that service right out of the gate is good. The best way to get jobs, I think, overall comes down to the solutions-based approach, which is kind of what I just said. Like one of the great examples that I had a contributor write about recently was, I can't remember what kind of business it was, but the owner, he started off with carpet cleaning. He was doing carpet cleaning for this business. That's how his company started. But he was working his way into restoration and wanted to kind of get these contracts going, or these relationships going, so that people would call him for restoration jobs too. And there was a building where the bathrooms constantly smelled like pee. And this guy, he got creative enough that he searched for like pads that you could put under urinals that like didn't hold pee smell, that seemed like everything else did, and they couldn't get the smell out. And he like troubleshooted this problem for this company and was able to come up with like an outside the box solution. He wasn't paid for this. It didn't bring him any immediate value. But then when that company had a loss later, they immediately knew, call this guy because he solved our problems before. He really cares about us. He went the extra mile on this. He's going to go the extra mile for a loss. So, I feel like you're nodding like that. We get that this isn't rocket science, but sometimes I think it feels like it. It seems counterintuitive to put the relationship first instead of trying to constantly close the sale. But building the relationships is what it's all about, right? I mean, that's what you and I have done, and we just commingle and interact here and whatever.
Commingle, I like that.
Commingle. I know that might maybe be the best word choice, but whatever.
Funny little story on that, but I was in South Carolina one Christmas, and there was some kind of emergency problem with the hot water tank, and it started spraying everywhere. And I'm an internet nerd, so like I know how to get the work, and I understand what you guys do, but I don't. These hands are for typing, not for working. And so we were all in a panic, and we ended up calling a plumber. And it started because they had an issue like 3 or 4 years earlier, and there's a really good plumber who came over and solved the problem, and he was really good. But they couldn't find his info. Like he just wasn't available online, and so they couldn't end up calling the guy back. And so they went to Google and just started rifling through names. And because it was Christmas Eve, nobody was available, right? Everybody was like, I'm over here, I'm doing this. And so like like nobody just picked up the phone. And finally there was one guy who said, yep, no problem, I can be there in 30 minutes, whatever. He came, he fixed it. But he did one little thing that was so different, is he went and just put his sticker on the hot water tank and said that. And it's like you said, it's not rocket science, but the next time there's a problem, like who do you think is going to get the phone call? The guy on the hot water sticker, right? So I love your little tip about going after the ERPs and then planting those seeds for later, because you can set yourself up for stuff like you said, that it might not pay for itself 3, 4, 5 years, but people remember who's that person who came in and helped us out. Like they don't forget that so easily.
And it could land you a multi-million-dollar job down the road. So it could be worth it. There's also some great technology around ERPs now that could really like wow the socks off of your clients if you're creating a digital ERP that you can interact with them on. So
I just want to ask you one more thing before we go. Just your thoughts on like kind of playing the relationship game with adjusters. I know this is kind of like a hot and cold issue depending on who you talk to, but I'd love to hear just some of your thoughts on like, the people who are making relationships with adjusters work and how that that whole magic comes together.
How the whole magic comes together. I think a lot of it goes back to even how sales works, where you have to take a relationship-based approach. Some of the, especially the newer desk adjusters, they don't know this stuff. They've not been in the field like it used to be, where adjusters were coming to the job site and the adjusters were writing the stuff in Xactimate, right? Now it's on the contractor and they're sending it over. And so it takes patience and willing to educate the adjusters that just don't know, but also don't be afraid to escalate up the chain of adjuster life. If, you know, if the desk adjuster just isn't getting it, you can escalate it. But I think you have to go into it with an open communication approach, instead of just, it's kind of the same with any life relationship, right? Like if you go into an argument with your spouse and you're like stonewalling them and not giving answers, you're not going to get anywhere, right? But if you go in, stonewalling works great. But if you go in kind of with an open mind and are willing to share the information that you know and kind of educate and be open in the dialogue, I think that that's going to get further. And they're going to also learn to trust you and your judgment and what you've done if you create a good relationship with them from the gate, instead of stonewalling and just being like, this is it, this is what I do, I don't care what you think.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, it comes down to just like, you know, not looking at them like adversaries and to begin with. So Michelle, you've got a lot of awesome stuff for our folks to check out if they want to get some more of your goodness besides cnrmagazine.com, which I'll put a link to below. Is there anything else you want folks to go and look at?
No, CNR is the big thing.
Well, CNR's got so much good stuff. You know, like she's putting out a magazine, a podcast. There's expert interviews. There's leaks. There's resources. There's a ton of stuff for you guys to check out to help your restoration business, only in 150 different ways before you spend an hour on the website. So make sure to check that out. And there's even an interview for me talking about getting jobs. So like that's how you know it's amazing.
There is. And I know one thing that's kind of exciting. We are just about to release our first English and Spanish article, and we're hoping to do more of that, where there's content that's both in English and in Spanish. So that's a direction that we're going now. So be on the lookout for that.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you, Michelle. We really appreciate you being here.
You're awesome, Frankie. Thank you.